I'm Ant-One Pearman, but that's just my secret identity. My true identity is Black Bible. I'm trying to be funny, but here's what it's all about. I'm GamerFitNation's Black Bible, also known as Ant-One Pearman, or vice versa, however you want to take it. Anyway, I want to talk to you both, gamers and developers, about a little project I started about a year ago. This came about due to the fact that at Spike Video Game Awards, Batman Arkham City came out, and as you know, it was the joy. But anyway, I asked Rocksteady a question, and I don't know why it came to me, but I said, hey, you know, is it possible for developers to create a good Superman game? Because as you know, Superman games haven't been good. And it was interesting to hear what they had to say, because they were, you know, in the middle of our interview, it really became that head scratching kind of talk. And then I thought about it. I said, you know what? There hasn't been really any good Superman games. Is Superman too big for gaming? This all stemmed from an article I wrote as well. So the question is Superman too big for gaming? Is it possible for game developers to create a good Superman game? I want the game developers to see what they had to say, because this is them saying if it's possible or not. And I want you gamers to understand, you know, why it may not or may be possible, but why haven't they produced one? We do not want a stinky bad Superman game. Batman had a bad trail of games. You know, it was like hit and miss for a good while, but then finally Rocksteady came up to the plate and saved the day. So now it's time for Superman. Tell me what you think.
The question of whether or not there can be a good Superman game, it's a very difficult question. Really, the problem comes from the level of power that Superman has. Because he is indestructible and all of that, it really doesn't make for great gaming. There isn't much tension. In order to have a great game, you have to have consequences, and you have to have tension. You have to have the ability to die in the game or succeed. And when you are invincible, it is really, really difficult. That said, it is possible, because there are lots of places you could go, lots of situations you could put him in which he would become vulnerable. And as long as you're playing to that game sense, or maybe you're not even relying on health, but some other kind of measurement of sanity or something like that that could make it an interesting gameplay, you could do something great.
I think that a really good Superman kind of a first-person, no, not first-person, but just a kind of standalone game is totally feasible. You saw what kind of Rocksteady Studios did a few years ago with Batman. They made kind of like the definitive Batman experience. And I think that as long as you made a compelling story around it, and you made it kind of plausible, you made it feasible about how he could take damage, and it wasn't just Superman going around everywhere and beating everybody up without, you know, being impervious to any kind of damage and stuff, that would probably take the fun out of it. But if you wrote a good storyline plot that got in there and got people excited and really kind of tweaked his character a little bit, kind of like what we did in Injustice, I think that a standalone Superman game would be a really successful project. I think people are looking forward to that. You know, I know there's a lot of old school people that remember the Superman game on Atari 2600, and I think that, you know, that's a good kind of starting point from that to go into the next generation and have it out there.
Yes, you can make a good Superman game. If there was some sort of end of the world, who would you call but Superman? Superman is the strongest force in the world and protects Earth. There's no way that you could not make a good Superman game.
I do, and there was a concept we kicked around about, you know, taking the Metroid approach. Like in the beginning of Metroid, when Samus gets her powers all stripped, then you gotta I think there's something there of a kernel of an idea where if you take Superman at its most powerful and strip him away of his powers, then slowly he regains those as the game progresses. I think there's that kind of structure that I think would lend itself very well to a Superman game. So I think that's just one possible avenue, but I think it can be done. There's a couple other design ideas, but I think that would be the most interesting, to steal it away, then make you earn to get them back. It is very challenging. You got to really, I mean, one possible, we talked about Panzer Dragoon. Remember the old Panzer Dragoon, the Sega game that he's flying, it's targeting. I mean, there's a whole bunch of cool things you can do with it, but I think it would take quite a bit of design work to figure it out.
Superman's tough, man. N64, yikes, rough. It's gotten some rough breaks. You know, for me, I know there's some people that I work with that say can't be done. But you know, one of the great things about working in the game industry is we see people come up with some amazing stuff all the time. We see games that you just never even thought were possible get turned into reality. That's why I do what I do, and I love being part of the industry. So if I was to make a Superman game, I'd love to see it take on that super dark, like almost Arkham Asylum, or maybe go episodic with something like Walking Dead style. I think if we do something different, might be able to come up with something really cool.
I totally believe that it's possible to create an awesome Superman game. I mean, the character can do basically everything. He's made of steel, he shoots laser from his eyes. It's definitely possible to give a player a very good experience making him play this character. And if you need a weakness, it's kryptonite if you forgot. That should be easy.
I believe it's possible to make a super cool Superman game. And the reason I believe this is, if it's possible to make a cool Superman comic, it's possible to make a cool Superman game. It's a challenge for comic book writers to make a good Superman comic book. The guy is invulnerable, he can do anything. But people still make good Superman comics. If they can make a good Superman movie, if they can make a good Superman comic, if they can make a good Superman cartoon, they can make a good Superman video game.
Yes, I think it's absolutely possible for someone to make a great Superman game, and I fully believe someone is going to at some point. Superman's a really great character. He's got huge appeal. People love that character, and the fantasy of being him is something that people dream of on a nightly basis. So I think there's a need for a great Superman game. I don't think it's just possible. I think someone should make a good Superman game, and I think as a developer, probably the biggest challenges are about the control system, I think, because the character just has so many abilities that you really would have to pick and choose as a developer as to which ones you were going to focus on and what sort of enemies you were going to put them up against. But yeah, do I think it's possible? Absolutely, and I think someone's going to do one soon.
How could we not make an awesome Superman game? Here's what we need. We need time, man. We need to develop an awesome engine, because you need to be able to walk around on the ground, you need to be able to fly up, go out of the atmosphere, fly to other planets, then come all the way back down. I don't know what engine does that, but that's Superman. That's the god that he is. We got to step outside the licensing cycle. It can't be tied into a movie. It needs to be all about Superman, the experience, the game. Let's dedicate, let's get in, let's make it Superman all the way.
Is it possible to make a good Superman game? It's a funny question, because whenever I interview a design candidate, I actually always ask them, if you have to make a Jimmy Olsen game, what would you go and do in an open world? So I've been thinking about this for a while. Superman's kind of a tough thing because he's got superpowers, he's invulnerable. What do you really do to have him be a threat? Superman's kind of lame. There's a lot of real cool characters in the Superman universe. I want to believe there's a good Superman game out there. I just don't think people know how to make it yet.
It's got to be possible, but it's a tough one because Superman is just such a badass. Like it's hard to even come up with opponents that are interesting for him to fight. So I think obviously one road to go down is nerfing him, but then you're playing a character that the fans don't really want to play. You don't want to play like Nancy like a weakened Superman or something. That's not like fun, and you know what Superman is. So
I not only think it is possible, I think it's gonna happen. I think it's inevitable. However, it requires a couple of things to happen all at once. One, it requires a developer that has passion for the idea and isn't just being thrown at it as, oh god, we have to make a lousy license title. Two, it requires a publisher willing to give them the time and the budget to do it. And three, and this is what has traditionally been the most complicated, it requires hands-off or enough leeway given to the developer from the licensor, which in this case would either be Warner Brothers Movies and DC Comics, to allow the developer to make the game they want to make without interference. So those three things came together to give us the Arkham Asylum games, which have been fantastic. They really got to the heart of the character without actually being based on a movie or a specific comic or anything. They got the nature of the character, and that's what it takes to make a decent Superman game. No Superman game ever made has ever, and I mean ever, come close to capturing the spirit of the character.
I think, a road that I would try and explore would be maybe like, somebody's got Lois Lane over here and somebody's got, 30 other hostages over here, and you have to go between them. So maybe all of your, you got to be fully powered, but all your opponents are weaklings, so you definitely can beat them, but it's a question of how you can beat them and how quick you can beat them and whether you can get those objectives or whether, you know, some of the people die or you lose Lois or whatever it is. That would be some drama, but rather than trying to just focus the drama on the combat, because Superman's such an overwhelming character, but you're also caught between the rock and a hard place of you don't want to nerf Superman. So I sympathize with any developers. I really hope they can nail it, but that would be probably maybe one direction I would look for to try and open up the character so you get a fully powered Superman, but you're faced with real, you know, the moral kind of challenges that Superman had to face about, like, I can do anything, but I can't do everything all at once.
Making a Superman game as a developer, I honestly think, you know, if you made it as an iOS game, maybe. That's the only way I think it could be possible, because those games, you know, like, you're okay with not ever dying. It's just, you know, something you go through. And maybe there's kryptonite and you could die, but I don't really think it's possible. There's some bad Superman games out there, so I don't think it's possible.
All right, actually, I've got a joke answer, but I'll leave that for the end. So the real answer is, I think there's one really huge challenge that when you're doing it, you need to surmount. And I'm not a good game designer capable enough to figure out how the hell you're going to do this, but it's a fact that Superman can do anything. Like, there's no restrictions to the gameplay. There's nothing that he really needs to overcome and really creates a challenge for him, let's say, other than kryptonite. So it's like, how do you define a game where he can go anywhere, he can basically do anything? And it's a really interesting game design challenge to try to solve. And it's definitely beyond my mental abilities. But you probably could make a really good game if you took and it's fitting that it's here, the Penny Arcade route, where it's throw everything to the sun. Whatever it is, throw it to the sun, and that's your game.
That would work. I also think Jason Bergman could make a good Superman game. He knows who he is, and he probably wants to make it.
Can we make a good Superman game? And I think absolutely. With current technology and graphics and game design, it's time we made a good Superman game. I've been in the game industry for over 20 plus years. I'm that old. So I've seen all the different versions been out there. I think the key is you got to take Superman seriously. He is a comic book hero, but if you look at all the successful interpretations of Superman from Brian Azzarello and Jim Lee when they wrote the Superman series that they did, if you look at the one true Superman movie by Richard Donner, they treated him as a man, but he had these incredible abilities. Now, if you look at game technology, though, like God of War, okay? Here's a man, but he's fighting immense creatures, huge battles, you know, things that take superhuman strength and power. It's been done, right? It can be done. You got to treat it seriously. You know, granted, God of War is mature, and Superman probably would have to be a T-rated game. We can't go too dark with that. But there's a depth, the seriousness that Superman should be treated with.
Personally, I think we could. A developer could make a really good Superman game. It would take time. It would take Fisher. It would take budget, because it's hard to make a game with Superman because there's so many constraints and invincible, whatever. But there's some element, some gameplay element we could play with. The fact that using like kryptonite, or like for sure you cannot fight human like one-on-one and stuff like that. But let's say Lex Luthor, like he's constructing this weapon with kryptonite like bullets, and then he could feel like give that to people, etc. So at least there's some. Superman would have a challenge, right? The fact that we'd be flying and walking, and that's also pretty challenging because you need to cover like a wide space. Like you just don't do like a city. Like it would need to be big. Like next gen would be perfect for that though. And except that, yeah, I think it's feasible. I think like a lot didn't succeed in the past, but it's. Yeah, it's quite challenging, but I just hope that at some point someone's going to be up for it.
I honestly believe that you guys have the best chance of making a Superman game that's actually good, and because you did it with Batman, and Batman was having a rough patch in games, so I mean, you think you guys could, if possible, if you got that, can you think you guys can do it? Give me a good Superman game. Come on. We believe it's you.
I mean, Superman's a character who, I think, you know, you're right, it has that challenge for gamers, but, you know, I think if there's nothing, I think we could do it, probably, if we put our mind to it. I don't know, I'd like to think so.
Wait, are you saying is a Superman game, a good Superman game possible? Yeah, definitely.
So can you make it? That's what he's asking you.
I don't know. We'll have to see.
Well, there you have it. You have these developers telling you their thoughts on the possible, if a Superman game is possible. I mean, the truth is Superman, you would figure that, movies have a hard time depicting Superman, but in video games, you would figure we have a lot more room for creativity. I mean, Superman is very powerful. As you know, throughout the history of watching Superman movies or following Superman comics, Superman is very powerful. He can do almost anything. But at the same time, I feel like somebody who said it off camera the best, because one developer said to me that he believes that, to make a good Superman game, you gotta make it like how Tall Tales does it and everything. But there's somebody out the crowd, not gonna say his name, Matt Frey, but anyway, he said one really cool thing to me and to the other guy. He said people want to play a Superman game because they want to feel like they're playing as Superman. So if you do something that limits Superman, that's not really Superman. And I get that. You want to play Superman because you want to feel like you're Superman. And that's the problem though. Superman is beyond the scope of imagination, but at the same time, game developers, I believe you can do it. I mean, the key function that makes it a little hard is the fact that flight technology in the game versus ground technology is two different realms. As you saw in EA's version, they had ground, but then they lost flight, and flight is, come on, you fly with Superman. And that was the problem. But I believe that, to me, the answer relies in, borrowing from who did it right. To me, Kojima mastered flight. He mastered flight with Zone of Enders. At the same time, and that could be arguably so. I just feel like Kojima mastered the art of flight in gaming. And when I say flight, I mean in that third-person perspective, that fast action, I'm able to attack, move, and shoot. He did that in Zone of Enders. He did that perfectly. So why can't developers say, you know what, this guy did it right, I'm gonna borrow from him. And, this guy did this right, so I'm gonna borrow from here. And bring the collaboration together. Story. Somebody said story. If you can make a great, Superman comic book, the story, you can make a great Superman game. I think that that's both right and wrong, in the sense that, yes, a good Superman game will need a great story. And that's the issue with most people. They just throw together these movie-based games and all that stuff, and they forget who Superman is. At the same time, I say that it's wrong due to the fact that there are technical aspects of it that needs to be controlled within that. I believe you get a great writer, a person who's willing to say, let's borrow from this down to third, and, put some nice, beautiful graphics to it. I believe it's possible, But hey, I want you, the fans, and you, the developers, to leave your comments. I want you to tell the fans, what your thoughts are, because, you are the guys with the talent. And for you, the fans, leave your comments for the developers, because these very developers said that they want to see this video and they want to see what you have to say. So leave a comment below. I'm telling you, all right? Superman. Is video game? Is the gaming world Superman's kryptonite? No, it wouldn't even be kryptonite. I think just Superman just kicks our butt. He's too big for our own imaginations. Can't think of an answer. Anyway, I'm GamerFitNation's Black Bible. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.